Why is a meaningful conversation considered to be offensive? Why do we make critical thoughts? These are all parts of shaming others for being smarter than the others, or rather called smart shaming.
We have a very, very sensitive topic to discuss. I think you know what the word is. It's smart shaming. So, smart shaming has been an issue. Well, I can't say it's a wide issue, but people have been tossing this word around. And I was wondering, was there anyone who has actually experienced this kind of thing? After all, it is a very sensitive thing, and it is basically a form of bullying, as is all shaming, like fat shaming, body shaming, whatever kind. So now we will be interviewing Derek. I will not be revealing his full identity or his full name, but for this purposes, we will just call him Derek. So let's see his story on his experiences of being smart shamed. Let's go to it. So, since you had that experiences during the times you were younger, like smart shaming. Can you give like maybe one instance of that happened?
Okay. I think the most memorable instance for me would be somewhere around sixth grade, where being an English speaker and of slightly darker skin than the average person, uh, there was this one person in class who had a habit of calling me Black American, or whenever I would have to talk to them for whatever reason, they would just hold their finger up to their nose, saying "nosebleed, spokening dollar," that sort of thing. And on one or two occasions, they had actually dropped the N word. I guess that would be the term for it. Very indecent. So it was sometimes around the lines of that. Sometimes it would become physical, but we don't have to get into that.
So, have you heard the term smart shaming?
Smart shaming isn't really an action so much as sort of a culture where it feels like there's a stigma against people who don't like who aren't into I guess one thing would be like sports, or for people who aren't into maybe pop culture, celebrity entertainment, that sort of thing. Whatever the non-mainstream is, and part of the non-mainstream in a large part of society would be the want for the want for I wouldn't say, maybe the want for knowledge. Like, it's not a pursuit that everybody does, and that's understandable because for the most part we're taught, like growing up, what we probably want money out of life, we want like happiness, we want like experiences, but I think that smart shaming sort of revolves around the idea that it's something wrong to be a nerd, or a geek, somebody whose pursuits are mainly intellectual. I mean, every field, like even let's say sports, especially, they have their own sciences, they have their own theoretical part of it, but it's something else to be into sports and another thing to want to learn about it. And I think that smart shaming sort of revolves around the idea that pursuits of the mind are something to be mocked.
In the Philippines, some people actually, you know, mock people who are speaking fluent English, from what I heard. So it's like they're saying it's weird and stuff. So, for you as an English speaker, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I've been an English speaker my entire life. Uh, it's the language that I grew up with, although I was born and raised in the Philippines. I learned how to read and write Tagalog from a very young age. I'd say since around 5 years old, reading and writing most of it. But when it came to speaking, especially, I couldn't speak until maybe 2013. And in the times that I would speak from like 2012, 2013, 2014, I still had the accent, the foreigner accent, and I feel like a lot of it, the language barrier that I experienced, the foreign shaming that I experienced for speaking English, came from several factors. One being the accent. Uh, it's always it's somewhat alienating to hear for a lot of people. They find it funny, and yeah, for some reason that was more than enough reason to discriminate. So like, there was a divide because of that, because of the language. The language barrier actually made an actual divide between me and people socially, which makes sense because language communication. And although they could understand English and they could speak English, uh, they decided to separate me and my friends who were mostly English speakers because of the fact that we were more fluent in it, and because of the fact that it wasn't normal for us to speak Tagalog.
So, do you think that what you experienced is like a form of xenophobia? Is that even a word? Or like fear of the unknown? Do you think?
Yeah, actually, I feel like it is. It's heavily. I think it actually is heavily rooted in xenophobia, more of a like a cultural xenophobia that they're afraid of. I wouldn't maybe not afraid, but the term is that they can't really accept the differences that they have between themselves and what at the time was me and my friends, because of the fact that we weren't into the same things that they were into, because of the fact we spoke a different language. I think that we actually grew up on a bit of a different culture, not the most traditionalist. Filipino culture, but then in the age of we were sort of growing up in the age of globalization, so I feel like it was kind of normal to share cultures with other nations. And when you talk about Philippine culture per se, I don't really think that it's that homogenous. Like culture you'll find in Manila having is very different from the culture that I had growing up in Laguna. And I feel like partly because of the fact that we were more closed off there, coming from the province, coming from a secular school, I guess. There was a very established culture amongst the people that lived there and amongst the people that we went to school with. So they had some kind of xenophobia, and well, we were young, we were pretty young, so they had trouble understanding that it's normal to see differences and lots of diversity between people.
So aside from yourself, do you know anyone who has experienced this same experience that you have gone through?
Like I said, growing up, I had a group of friends. There were how many of us? Maybe three, four, or five of us, and we were sort of the weird ones, quote unquote. As there's always people always talk about that in high schools. Like you'll see the like tag your weird friends, something like that. It's pretty normal. It's a trope almost that there's going to be like this group of people that they're like nerdy, they're weird, they're into things that people aren't normally into, and part of the category with that, from in my school, at least among the people in my school, was that this group of people that were the odd ones out were also English speakers. There was a big divide between us, one because of the language and two because of the interests.
Mm. So it's not just the language you're using, but also the interest, like what you said a while ago, because how it's more intellectual in a way, right?
Um, well, not exactly more intellectual, more academic in that sense. It's just different. I'm not saying that it's a better culture. No, it's not a better culture. It's just a different one. And for one reason or another, they couldn't accept that. So I guess yeah, it's definitely a form of English shaming because of the fact that you can't speak their language the way that they do, and your language is different from theirs. So the way that you communicate and as well as the things that you become interested in. Like take for example, I didn't really watch a lot of daytime television in like Tagalog. I never watched Showtime. I never watched telenovelas. I never watched anything on Philippine prime time because of the fact that, well, for one thing, they didn't really interest me, and I think part of that came from the language, because being an English speaker, I was more gravitated towards English shows. So the culture just grew. There was a bit of a cultural divide that came from the language divide, and because of that, like there was a lot of shaming that went on. There was a lot of discrimination that happened. We were the minority.
So, a lot of people have been saying bullying is a part of life and it's normal. It's kids. It's a kids thing. People will always say that it's just kids being kids, name calling, shaming, all those bullying stuff, all those nasty stuff when you were kids. But for you, do you think it's not? This is not the case. Do you think it's not just a normal thing? Do you think it's a big issue?
Bullying has always been very, very, very serious. And the thing is that I don't know why people decide to turn a blind eye to it. They say things like, oh, that kids will be kids, sort of like that. That's just culture in school. It just happens. But the thing is that this happens during your formative years, and bullying sort of always puts down one person. And if they hold on to that, they'll probably hold on to it for the rest of their life. Or if not, it'll still affect them one way or another. The psychological trauma of it now, especially in recent years when people started to accept mental illnesses as a real thing. Is it before it was just like it's the fact that it's all in the mind, that sort of thing. But the fact that society is starting to accept mental illnesses as for what they are, as something very real. They have to understand the fact that bullying is a very heavy thing that contributes heavily to a lot of these things, like depression or social anxiety issues. A lot of it can root from when they're young and they have trouble interacting with their peers because of the fact that there's something different about them. Because for whatever reason, for smart shaming reasons, for language barrier reasons, for the way that they dress, for what they're interested in, those sort of things. That if you make a divide that early, then the person will really feel separated from the peers growing up, and then it'll carry on. They'll have a hard time interacting with their peers, with other people, as they move on in life, as they grow up.
If ever na kailangan na ayusin yung voice modulation, kailangan yung distance mo sa microphone.
Oo na! Oo na! Gets na namin! Sige na! Ikaw na! Lagi naman!
Ang dami pa sinasabi eh. Sige na, ikaw na matalino.
Wow ha!
Lagi na lang
Ganyan
ikaw.
ka lagi.
Tigil na, please. We have no right to humiliate anyone, not even a friend. Stop smart shaming. Stop verbal abuse.
Miss X is just one of those victims of smart shaming. She is considered as a know-it-all girl, a nerd, or even a geek. How the smart shaming affected her life? Let us all hear the side of Miss X. Our first question is, what is your view on smart shaming in the Philippines?
I believe that smart shaming really exists here in the Philippines, as I was a victim of smart shaming when I was still in high school. So, I think that the new generation, or what we call the millennials now, are having their own ways on how they smart shame people, not only physically or whenever they are physically around, but also using social media and other means of communications that we have right now.
How do you relate it in your experience as a victim of smart shaming?
Well, since I've mentioned that millennials do have a new way of smart shaming people, what I can say is that it's more critical than how it used to be. Because right now, when they smart shame people over the internet or with the use of social media, such as Facebook, everyone else around the globe who uses Facebook will know will know what they're doing, or will know that they're smart shaming people. So I think it's more tantamount or the same as cyberbullying, as what the modern people call it.
Do you think you're bullied with those kind of words like, "Eddie, wow, ikaw na yung magaling," and something like, "Those big ako, so stop it"?
Well, I think those expressions are really common nowadays, but that would really depend on how it was delivered and who delivered those words. So basically, those expressions is common, and I don't think it's a way of smart shaming.
So why do you think smart shaming has to be stopped when it is considered nowadays, especially to the Filipino, as a form of joke?
Well, I think it has to stop because people, Filipino people have a lot of ideas to share. And sometimes, since we do have different personalities and we do have different perspectives in life, these kinds of expressions would really block a person to share his or her ideas. Sometimes in a group of friends and someone shared their ideas, and then someone would say, "Eh, di wow, ikaw na magaling," something like that. It's okay if you are with just your friends, but if it is done publicly, like when everyone or some people that you're not close to would hear that, you would just stop, and then you would just not say anything, even if you have a bright idea to share, or you have a comment that would help another person. So I think it should stop, because it will definitely not help everyone, or it will not, be beneficial to those people that are needing new idea, or something revolutionary, a revolutionary thought that would result into good things.
Lastly, what is your message to the other victims of smart shaming?
Well, I think they should not be affected when they're being smart shamed, or when someone is smart shaming them. I think what they should do is just to learn how to express themselves freely, whether or not people around them like it, because we have to face it. Like we live in a world that is new ideas are very well accepted and very well motivated, because we are now in a modern age, and those ideas, who knows, might change the world for the better.
It feels good in my heart, in my soul, when you're here right beside me. I don't ever want this day to end. We can watch the fire, have a Coke, and just sit here beside me. Take a little of my heart again. Yeah, my love, there's a song in my soul. When you are around me, you make it easier to sing. No.